Hey everyone, Tim Anderson here, aka Renfill. Welcome back to another episode as we dive into the Rings of Power. And today we're going to be discussing how, ever since the firing of Tom Shippey from the show, the world's leading Tolkien expert, Amazon Studios refuses to name any of the experts working on their show. Let's use air quotes around that, experts. Because if you're not willing to share the names of these people, but you keep touting them as the reason for why your show is going to be so good, because we've worked with the world's leading experts, the world's leading Tolkien scholars on our show, but you won't tell us who they are? That is sus as hell. We're also going to be talking about some of the controversy regarding Mariana Rios Maldonado, who was quoted in the Vanity Fair piece. But I can't find any information online that shows that she's actually worked on the show. So I don't know where people are making the assumption that she's somehow a scholar working on the show. I think she was just interviewed for the Vanity Fair piece. I could be wrong. I'm looking forward to hearing people's comments and sharing more information with me in the links below that could perhaps prove otherwise. Let's dive in today. But before we do, if this is your first time here, don't forget to smash that like button. And if you get to the end and you liked what you saw today, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so you get updates for all the future content that I produce here on YouTube, which is vast and varied. It's not just related to Tolkien. Check out the playlists here. We also have a Discord. Links are down below. We play Lord of the Rings Online together as a gaming community if you want to come join us there. All good stuff to be found if you do some digging, which is what anyone should be doing when anything related to online is research. Let's dive in. I've done a little bit of research. Let's talk about it. So the Vanity Fair piece I've covered a couple times. I've covered both of the Vanity Fair pieces that have showed up here in my YouTube channel. But today we're going back to this one, and we're talking about how um, well, we're going to be looking at this specific point here in the middle, about two-thirds of the way down. Up until now, Amazon has said virtually nothing about its show. The secrecy has irked some of the fandom who were accustomed, as they were, to the close relationship and steady flow of behind-the-scenes information from Peter Jackson and New Line Cinemas, which I guess is now called New Line Studios. I always loved this, and that was one of the things we were actually talking about this on the Looking for More show last Thursday. If you want to tune into that show, by the way, every Thursday at 5 p.m. Central over on the Twitch channel for Simmerg, it's twitch.tv/Simmerg. We do the Looking for More show where myself, Simmerg, and Nathan Napalm get together and talk about all things nerd, games, and everything else. And we've been discussing Rings of Power a lot. And one of the things we were discussing in regards to building a community around your project, building up a fan base, is by being there constantly with the community. And Peter Jackson has always done a great job of that by documenting everything, being very involved in social media, sharing those clips and snippets out throughout production, and earning the trust of the fan base as he's gone along. Meanwhile, Amazon Studios, I almost said the wrong company, Vernon Sanders, head of U.S. Global Television for Amazon, had this to say: "We believe all of the work and all of that secrecy and all of that protection will actually be to the benefit of our customers." Hang on. They don't view you as a fan. They don't view you as a community member. They don't even view you as a valued member at all. They view you as a customer. And I think this is one of the most telling components of what Amazon is doing here, because they are not building a show built on community or involvement with the greater Tolkien fan base around the world. It's all about building an IP that they can generate $1 billion for them. And you are, ladies and gentlemen, nothing more than a customer. Don't be fooled. You are not a fan. Um, this is the part where we talk about the fact that there was a leak in 2019 that, however innocuous seemed, worried some of those watching from afar. The show's resident Tolkien scholar, a widely respected academic named Tom Shippey, gave an apparently unsanctioned interview to a German fan site in July, opining on what the show could and could not explore. Not long after that, Shippey was no longer involved with the series. Both he and the showrunners declined to say what actually happened, but the obvious assumption was made by fans. Um, Drought, a Tolkien professor, goes on to say, "It seems like the NDA for Amazon is basically, if you tell anyone, we're going to put you through the wood chipper." And this is where the article says, "Amazon no longer shares the names of its scholars," which is the part that boggles my mind, because you would think if you're trying to earn the trust of the community and to prove to people that you are, in fact, doing right by Tolkien's work, you would have the world's most renowned Tolkien scholars backing you up and showing off their credentials to prove that you actually are working with the people who know best. But you fired the world's best, and you won't show us who else you got, which makes me think that you don't actually got nobody. Like, you've got people with opinions at this point who aren't actually scholars, and you're not willing to share their pedigree with us because they don't have a pedigree. And of course, that's my opinion, but I think it's valid. Let me know what you think in the comments below, everybody. It also talks how they lost a few other people along the way, like actors Will Poulter and Tom Budge, production designer Rick Heinrichs, um, head of genre Sharon Talluado, who helped negotiate the Tolkien deal in the first place. And the production, they talk about how how Stuart Townsend was replaced by Viggo Mortensen even after he began filming. The showrunners and executives insist that on any long trip, it is inevitable that some don't complete the journey, and that's a fair statement to make. As much as I love Stuart Townsend as an actor, what did he do? That comic book series called, was it 13 or X, something like that? Um, Dorian Gray in The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which is not that great of a movie, but I loved his portrayal. He also did the vampire Lestat in Queen of the Damned. I like Stuart Townsend as an actor. Um, but it's a good point here that people can change along the way when you're looking at a long-term production. That's a fair point. But here's the thing. One of the reasons that I was so hyped up about the show when it first became news years ago was the fact that we had pedigree like John Howe and Tom Shippey, who had worked with Peter Jackson on Hill's films. Like Shippey was actually hired, as I recall, um, on Peter Jackson's films to come in and teach the cast and help with the pronunciation of the Elven languages. So this is not some dude off the street. This is an 80-year-old man who is the world's leading expert. Why would you fire him? You can actually dig into his wiki. And for those of you who say, "Oh, you're using the wiki in an article," whatever, there's some really great links here to his biography. And that's what I really wanted to point out was just to scroll down here and look at all the stuff he's been involved in over the years. One of his better books being J.R.R. Tolkien, author of the century. Um, so it's just if you're into Tolkien, this is the guy you go to. Why would you fire him from your show just because he made an accidental? Maybe he gave an opinion from what everyone says. He gave an opinion on a German talk show about what the Rings of Power showrunners could and couldn't talk or could and couldn't touch in the Rings of Power show, and that pissed off some people at Amazon, and so they gave him the boot. Nobody's talking. That's how NDAs work, but it is what it is at this point. Um, Going back to the Rings of Power article over at Vanity Fair, the article, which is a great piece of journalism here, as well as being a sort of preview and the first look at the show, they do cover a lot of different things. For example, we've got this section here where we're talking about are there going to be hobbits in the second age? In short, so to speak, haha, yes and no. One of the very specific things the texts say is that hobbits never did anything or noteworthy or historic before the third age, says McKay, one of the showrunners. But really, does it feel like Middle Earth if you don't have hobbits or something like hobbits in it? Well, that's the problem here, McKay. It's not about feeling, it's not about injecting your personal feelings into things. It's about staying true to the text and staying true to the spirit of what Tolkien wrote. And if you had followed the advice of your Tolkien scholars, well, hang on, your foremost Tolkien scholar who you had at one point in time, you might know that. But by working with people whose credentials you aren't sharing with us, I'm afraid you might be getting some information that's not necessarily the best. Now, here's the part where we dive into this. The Amazon series will also broaden the notion of who shares the world of Middle Earth. One original storyline centers on a Sylvan elf named Arondir, who will be the first person of color to play an elf on screen in a Tolkien project. And I've previously talked about why I don't think it was a good idea to do a gender swap for the Baron and Luthien story. I need more coffee, apparently. But the most important thing here is where Lindsay Weber, executive producer on the series, goes on about how they're injecting more than just personal feelings into things. It's only felt natural to us that an adaptation of Tolkien's work would reflect what the world actually looks like. Tolkien is for everyone. His stories are about his fictional races doing their best work when they leave the isolation of their own cultures and come together. The last part is true because one of the coolest parts about the Lord of the Rings films is like the relationship with the elves and dwarves and the mending of that relationship as they come together once again to fight the evil that is Sauron. But the problem is that this part, it only felt natural that an adaptation of Tolkien's work would reflect what the world actually looks like. Well, the thing is, Tolkien already wrote his version of the world, and if you remember, it was somewhat similar to our own in terms of geographic layout. We had in the Northwest, sort of in the West, we had the white, you know, pale skinned, I don't want to say white because that might offend people, the pale skinned individuals, darker skinned individuals to the south, and Orientals, off to the east. So Asian slash Orientals, I don't know the political correct way to say that. So it very much kind of sort of mirrored our own geographical layout in terms of Scandinavian countries having pale skinned people, as the southern countries had darker skinned people and having um, a sort of olive skinned complexion to the eastern lands. That's all based on our own geography that has no race in it whatsoever. It's just geographical in nature. But yet, they're trying to inject their own opinion on what Tolkien's work should say and how it reflects what the world actually looks like. Now, this sparked, obviously, a huge debate online. When Amazon released photos of its multicultural cast, even without character names or plot details, the studio endured a reflexive attack from trolls, the anonymous online kind. Obviously, and this is where Mariana Rios Maldonado comes into play. Obviously, there was going to be a push and backlash, she says, and it goes on to say here, she's not affiliated with the Rings of Power, right? But the question is from whom? Who are these people that feel so threatened or disgusted by the idea that an elf is black or Latino and Asian? So, very quickly, I would like to point out if you haven't watched the video I did a couple of days ago on Does Race Matter in Middle Earth? I talk about this, and I talk about the fact that it's not, for me anyway, I don't care about the skin color of who plays what. For me, it's about the right actor for the job. But there are good concerns being brought up about how we wouldn't see a white actor being cast in the role of Black Panther, as an example, because that would be cultural appropriation. And when we look at how Tolkien wrote the Scandinavian races of his world, the elves, the dwarves, hobbits, and men, not necessarily men in particular, but the men of that part of the world, they were all light skinned. Now, there were other dark skinned men in Tolkien's world, but elves and dwarves and hobbits are not mentioned as having dark skin. In fact, elves are mentioned as having fair skinned many times when they are referenced. So I think it's a stretch to say that it's people that feel threatened or disgusted. I don't feel threatened or disgusted. I feel that it's more about the right actor for the job. But when you make a statement like the studio has done about how we're doing this so that everyone can feel included, I feel like we're no longer staying true to the source material. We're now forcing something into this character and then only casting an actor of a certain culture or a certain color to represent that actor because we feel that that's how that character needs to be represented. And again, this goes back to the whole Black Panther thing, which again, I talk about this in my video on Does Race Matter in Middle Earth because I think that bringing our real world politics into the fray isn't a good thing. That being said, this is where I just don't understand where people have gone out and savaged this woman. She's a PhD student at the University of Glasgow, and the article does say she's not affiliated with the Rings of Power, but yet I've seen all these rumors online that she's somehow this scholar working on the show, and it's like, as far as I know, she's only been interviewed in this piece, and they mention that here. Now, the Center for Fantasy and the Fantastic at the University of Glasgow actually released a statement a few days ago now, February 16th. Um, let's dive into this here real quick. It says, in recognition of her standing as a scholar with special expertise in Tolkien studies, Mariana was introduced by journalists, and a short quotation from the interview was included in the February 10th, 2022 exclusive Vanity Fair article, which revealed some of the casting, plotline, and other choices beyond the highly anticipated TV epic. This quotation has elicited unwarranted and unacceptable abuse and misinformation from certain quarters who have taken against the series' diverse casting. We are saddened and to see hate and abuse directed towards a person of color researching Tolkien, and we stand by Mariana, her research, and her inclusive approach to fantasy. These are the values the center shares, clearly articulated in our code of conduct. Um, Now, this is where I'm like, if you go digging, and I did, there's an amazing 5 minute. It's 5 minute interview. It says the latest installment of our 5 minutes with so and so series, where we interview this time around PhD researchers across the arts and humanities in Scotland, and today they interviewed Mariana Rios Maldonado, who's pursuing her PhD in fantasy literature at the University of Glasgow, and this is from 2020. I'm going to put the link in here, but this is from the Scottish Graduate School for Arts and Humanities. This is a brilliant interview with someone who shows that she has clear passion for Tolkien and recommends Shippey's Author of the Century, J.R.R. Tolkien, Author of the Century book, as a must read. She mentions how his work is not only seminal for Tolkien scholarship, but also a very engaging and thought provoking read. Now, this is where I kind of feel like people have maybe lost the plot a little bit because we go back to the Vanity Fair piece and it says that she's not associated with the Rings of Power, but yet I see all these people around the world saying she is the de facto diversity scholar the Amazon hired, and that she's the reason behind why we're going to see blacks and Latinos and Asians cast as elves, even when Tolkien never described any of his elves as looking like blacks, Latinos, or Asians. I don't know. This is all the interesting stuff for me because I feel that one of the reasons, because since that article came out and she has received all this abuse online, she has made all of her social media private. And I would like to say that it doesn't matter to me what her point of view is on Tolkien. I don't care if she, because in the course of her doing her PhD, she may find things that she thinks are problematic in Tolkien. I think we could all find things. I always look at Robert Jordan. I love Robert Jordan's books. I love The Wheel of Time, but there are things like always pulling her braid and things of that nature, which even drive me nuts about Robert Jordan's work. And sometimes he gets way too wordy, which I'm apparently getting wordy here because I'm 16 minutes in, so I need to wrap this up. Um, the point I'd like to make is I think one of the reasons that Amazon Studios, this could be the case. I don't know if this is the case. One of the reasons they might have decided to no longer mention the names of their scholar is because of this type of reaction, because we'll immediately get people going out there and throwing shade on everybody. But I do think it's also sus as hell, as I said at the beginning, when you won't tell us who your experts are, but you keep touting these experts. Like, if you're not going to tell us who they are, then don't bother mentioning them, because you're obviously going to do what you want to do anyway with the show ever since you fired the world's leading scholar on all things Tolkien. I don't know. I'd love to hear thoughts. This was sort of a wider ranging video today. I think it's quite a bit longer than the other videos I've done on the topic, so hopefully I didn't bore you all today. Love to hear all those thoughts down below. Let's drop comments down again. And if you find anything that you think I should know about and any research that I should be doing beyond this, and you have links to source material that could correct me or help me improve the types of video I'm doing, I'd happy to receive those links. Feel free to drop them down in the comments below. And hopefully you've got to the end here and you liked the video enough to give it a like, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, all those good things. And hopefully we'll see you in Discord as well. And if you want to know more about what I'm building with the World of the Weave and the Void, you can check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/Wine and Hermits, where my wife and my brother and I are working on a 5th edition tabletop setting, fantasy novels series, and a point-and-click adventure game. Stick around, everybody. I'll have more content coming to you soon. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, keep reading.